When Kublai Khan died, nobody knew where his body ended up. That's not legend. That's not myth. That's the Mongol way. His funeral riders scattered in every direction, killing anyone who saw them. The man who ruled from the Pacific to Persia vanished into the dirt like he never existed. One day you're a storm, and the next, you're a ghost. After his death, the Yuan Dynasty tried to pretend everything was fine. Paper money kept getting printed. Bureaucrats kept stamping seals. The court kept eating like it was still 1270. But the truth? The system was hollow. The Mongol elite had turned from horsemen into politicians. And politicians love one thing more than power: comfort. While the treasury was drained, the peasants starved. Floods hit the Yellow River. Droughts followed in the south. Tax collectors squeezed farmers for war funds, even though there were no wars left to fight. Every corner of China had a rebellion brewing. The Mongols were supposed to be conquerors, but they had built an empire so big that it needed accountants more than warriors. And when your survival depends on paperwork instead of people, you're fucking done. In Persia, the Ilkhanate was collapsing the same way. After Hulagu's line fizzled out, every prince and governor decided they were the rightful heir. They built massive courts and huge armies. But there was an issue. They didn't have any fucking money to pay them. The silk routes that once funded them were drying up, and the gold went straight into fountains, feasts, and bribes. Meanwhile, up in the north, the Golden Horde had turned into what we'd call a protection racket. They still demanded tribute from the Rus states, but the relationship had flipped. The princes who paid them started manipulating them, using Mongol politics against Mongol generals. The Horde still had muscle, but it had lost discipline. Soldiers spent more time collecting taxes than training. And turning warriors into tax collectors is a terrible idea. The old Mongol unity was gone. Every Khanate spoke a different language, prayed to a different god, and hated the others. What was once a machine had become 4 feuding fiefdoms. Does that sound familiar? Fuck yeah! Every superpower eventually becomes a collection of disconnected states fighting over who gets to pretend they're still in charge. By the early 1300s, the trade networks that made the Mongol world so rich were breaking down. The Silk Road was a web of bribes, checkpoints, and tolls. Merchants had to hire private militias to survive the trip. Cities that once thrived under Mongol protection now had to build walls to defend against them. And when trade collapses, everything else goes with it. Less trade means less food. Less food means famine. Famine means rebellion. Rebellion means soldiers. Soldiers mean taxes. Taxes mean debt. And debt means collapse. It's a feedback loop of failure. Same then, same now. Kublai's heirs thought they could fix it with bureaucracy. They just kept creating new offices, new departments, new taxes. The Yuan Dynasty was drowning in paperwork. By the 1300s, entire provinces were declaring independence while still claiming loyalty to the Yuan. That's like saying, We totally support the government from our new country. Meanwhile, in Persia, the Ilkhanate imploded completely. They ran out of silver, their soldiers went unpaid, and the governors started printing fake decrees. Eventually, nobody believed anything stamped with the royal seal. You know a government's dead when its own paperwork doesn't carry weight. Look at the way fake news and propaganda fills the gaps left by broken institutions. When people stop believing the official word, they'll believe any word. The Mongols had forged the first global information network, trade, couriers, communication lines, and now it was collapsing into chaos. Sounds a lot like our internet, doesn't it? Built to connect, now used to divide. Up north, the Golden Horde was slowly rotting from the inside. They had converted to Islam, which brought some order for a while. But religion couldn't fix economics. The power brokers fought each other like mafia families. They still called themselves Khans, but they were really just landlords with armies. The Horde stopped raiding and started collecting. The Mongols had built a system where everyone owed someone something. When the center failed, that chain of debt pulled everything down with it. History doesn't need imagination. It just needs to remember. Then came the rumor that changed everything. In the 1340s, merchants moving west out of China carried a story, a sickness that wiped out entire towns. The details were vague, but the fear was real. The Mongol trade routes that once carried silk and spices now carried rats and fleas. Plague doesn't care about politics, and it doesn't need a passport. Within a few years, it reached Europe. The Black Death would kill between a third and a half of the known world. That's the last gift of empire. Global connectivity without global responsibility. And if you think that sounds familiar, it should. We built our own Silk Road, highways of data, supply chains stretching across oceans, flights connecting every city in a day. Then, one virus jumped the fence, and suddenly the world found out how fragile globalization really is. The Mongols learned it first. We had to relearn it. By the mid-1300s, the Yuan Dynasty was collapsing outright. A massive rebellion broke out, the Red Turban Rebellion. We're going to be doing an episode on it later. It wasn't one army, but dozens of local movements. Farmers, monks, and outcasts who were just done. They were fed up. They marched under religious slogans but fought for food and freedom. In 1368, a man named Zhu Yuanzhang, a former peasant and monk, marched into Dadu, modern Beijing, and declared himself emperor. The Yuan fled north. Just like that, the Mongols were gone from China. And in that silence, the world changed. Trade rerouted, power shifted, and faith hardened. But the Mongol legacy, roads, networks, speed, scale, it never died. It just mutated. When the Mongols fell back from China, they thought it was temporary. It wasn't. They retreated to the north, regrouped on the steppe, and waited for the mandate of heaven to swing back their way. But the mandate never came. The wind was gone. The people were gone. The world had changed. The Ming Dynasty moved fast. They sealed borders, rebuilt walls, and kicked out every Mongol administrator. In the span of a decade, the Mongols went from emperors of the world to exiles watching from the steppes. It's like watching a CEO go from global dominance to waiting tables in his own company's cafeteria. And in Persia, the Ilkhanate was dust. The last real Ilkhan died without an heir, and the political vacuum turned into an auction. Warlords bought legitimacy by the pound. One general called himself a restorer of order. Another declared himself the true Khan. They all wanted the same thing: control of the tax base. The bureaucracy that once terrified governors became a yard sale. Meanwhile, in the West, the Golden Horde had started fracturing into smaller khanates. They still ruled over the Rus, but Moscow was rising. A local prince, named Ivan, learned to play both sides. He was paying tribute to the Horde while building his own power base. His plan was simple: let the Mongols fight each other, then buy what's left. And it worked. Over the next century, the Horde kept splitting. White Horde, Blue Horde, Kazan, Astrakhan, until the title Golden Horde was more nostalgia than fact. Trade didn't stop overnight, but it slowed enough to hurt everyone. The Mongols had once guaranteed safe passage across Eurasia. Now every border was a gamble. Merchants risked their lives for profit margins that barely existed. Pirates took to the seas. Bandits took to the roads. And where there's desperation, there's disease. The same system that made the world rich also made it vulnerable. Between 1346 and 1353, the plague killed an estimated 75 to 200 million people, wiping out half of Europe, much of the Middle East, and entire Chinese provinces. One empire had connected the world. The plague broke those connections. You can still see the fingerprints today. Every time a virus shuts down an airport, or a cyber attack crashes the global supply chain, or you get an email from your daughter's school because someone decided to not vaccinate their kid, and that same kid is now bringing a highly infectious disease into the school. So there's that. But the Mongols taught us a few things. They taught us how to make the world smaller, but we never learned how to make it safer. In the aftermath, something strange happened. The Mongols vanished from power, but their systems survived. Postal routes, tax systems, and the idea of a connected world. They didn't invent globalization. They were globalization. But they couldn't manage it. No empire can. Once you connect the world, you lose control over what moves through it. That's the part every superpower forgets. You can't curate chaos. When the Mongols lost China, they turned back to what they knew: the steppe, the horses, the clans. But even that had changed. The nomadic life they romanticized was gone. The open land was carved into territories, claimed by new warlords who called themselves kings and sultans. The steppe was still wide, but there was no room left to breathe. Their grandsons grew up hearing stories of glory from old warriors who had conquered the world. But now, those same men were herding sheep and dying in their yurts. Every generation thinks they're the exception. And then, every generation learns they're not. In the east, a few Mongol tribes tried to hold the dream together. The northern Yuan, they built new camps, crowned new khans, and told themselves the empire still lived. But even among themselves, they couldn't agree who the real descendants of Genghis were. Some followed one line, some followed another. It was politics, not prophecy. The descendants of Genghis became a business model. By the late 1300s, even the smallest spark of Mongol unity was gone. And yet, their ghost lingered. Every power that rose after them, the Ming in China, the Ottomans in Turkey, the Russians in the north, built their playbook from Mongol logistics and Mongol psychology. The empire was dead, but its blueprint survived. The Mongols didn't just reshape the world, they rewired human behavior. They normalized conquest. They proved speed beats tradition. They taught rulers that fear travels faster than faith. Every tyrant since has taken notes. And while they faded, a legend began to grow. Not of Kublai or Hulagu or Batu, but of Genghis himself. Temujin became more than a man. He became myth. To some, he was the god of war. To others, a symbol of unity. In secret stories told by herders, it was whispered that his spirit would return when the steppe was ready, when the tribes remembered who they were. And that's where the cycle begins again. A world broken by power starts craving a strong hand. A people, tired of chaos, start praying for control. And control, as always, comes at a price. I mean, come on, look around. Every generation builds its own version of an empire. Corporations, nations, online platforms. And every generation forgets the warning. The Mongols were the first to globalize, the first to overreach, and the first to collapse under the weight of their own network. We're just the sequel, faster, louder, and equally doomed to repeat the script. The eternal sky doesn't care who's on top. It watches, waits, and balances the equation. But the lesson every empire ignores. You can conquer the world, but you can't conquer yourself. That's it for this episode. Stay tuned for the next one. If you like the show, hit that follow. If you don't like the show, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it. Take care.